Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another field strip video. And the rifle that we're going to be taking apart today for cleaning and maintenance is a really cool Swiss-made rifle, the Sig SG 550. I recently did a range report on this rifle. It does need to be cleaned, so that's why I'm taking it apart. And in that range report I talked about how this gun kind of is a combination of an HK legacy gun, an AK-47, and an AR-15, and the takedown procedure kind of reminds me of all three of those guns. So as always, let's start by removing the magazine and of course ensuring there is no ammunition in it. Looks like we are good. We will then pull back the charging handle and of course visually inspect that chamber, make sure there is no ammunition in it. Now the next thing we're going to do is to push out these pins, and this is very much like an AR. So we have two pins, one in the front of the lower, one in the rear. We can push through that pin in the back first, and once it's all the way out, we can hinge this down, and then we can push out the other pin and we can pull that one out and then remove that from the receiver. If you want, you can fully remove these pins. They're not completely captive. And there is your lower receiver. You can fold the stock, you don't have to. Then we're going to go to the bolt and the bolt carrier, and when you turn it around here you will notice there is a little lever right here, and we're going to push down on this lever, and when that lever is down we can now pull out the charging handle. Set that aside, and with the charging handle out, that separates it from the recoil mechanism, and now the whole bolt and bolt carrier will come out, and this comes apart much like an AK-47. So there's parts of that that definitely look very familiar. Set that aside. The next thing we're going to do is take off the handguard, and when we remove this pin down here, we can now remove the handguard. So the first thing we're going to do is pull back on the lower part, and then we should be able to simply lift up on it, and we have the bipod on it that if you want to, you can take off. And in my range report, I did mention that I thought this was made of polymer. The bipod is actually made of metal, but it's just very flexible. So there's your lower handguard and your bipod. And now the upper handguard simply will pop out just like that. We're now going to go to the front of the gun, and there's going to be a little detent right here. You can take the charging handle, you can push this detent in, and then you can rotate the front of the piston downward. Push that in, and then you can simply rotate it, and then once it gets to a certain point it will allow you to pull it out, and that corresponds to these lugs on the gas tube right here, which go into the upper, and you can see where those lugs would line up, and that is the completely field stripped upper receiver. Now to get the piston and the spring out of this, all you have to do is rotate this here in the front and line up the lugs, and when it's lined up you can simply pull out the piston and then push through the actual piston rod and the recoil spring, and there you go. And that is a complete field strip of a Sig SG 550. All right, so let's get this gun all cleaned up and let's put it back together. So we got this Sig rifle all cleaned up and ready to go back together, and we're going to start with the hardest part of assembly. And when you took this apart it was really easy, but getting everything lined back up to go back together is actually a little bit tough. So we're going to start with the piston and the gas tube. We're going to start by putting the piston through the gas tube, and you've got to be very careful to make sure that this little hooked portion of the piston, which is going to go around the charging handle, generally is facing the downward direction, and we're probably going to have to adjust this as we go into the receiver. And then in the front we're going to put our plug in. Right now it doesn't matter where it is as long as it is locked in. So then we're going to go through the front of the receiver and through the gas block, and generally we're going to make sure that hooked portion is going to be facing downward, and Get it over into the gas block, and now we're going to rotate this where generally it's going down, and hopefully these locking lugs will line in, and you'll know if it's facing downward in the correct way that it goes into the receiver. If in the front, you can push the gas tube all the way in and it will close this detent. And as you can see right now, it's not going all the way in. So what I'm going to do is pull this out a little bit and adjust this and try to line it up where it's going to go into a slot inside that receiver. And it looks like I got it, because now you can see this is flush with the receiver. Now what you're going to want to do is go to the top, and when you adjust this plug, you'll notice if you rotate it, there'll be some places where the detent can slot into it and give you a couple of different settings, and you want to make sure that it is lined up with that. If you don't get that right, this will simply spin freely and it will not work right. So let me adjust it, and I think I found one of them right there, and now I can rotate the gas tube down where that detent will go into place, and I think I'm good. And you'll know it's right if you have the multiple settings. If it completely rotates, you know you missed that and have to take it out again and redo it. So now the gas tube is in there. Everything is looking good, like it's supposed to be. So now let's set that aside for just a moment. Let's get our bolt and carrier, and this is going to go together just like a AK-47. Put it in there, rotate it, push it forward. Now let me get this receiver again. We're going to put the bolt and bolt carrier in through the rear. You got to make sure that bolt is all the way forward for it to fit and clear everything. If not, it rotates a little bit and it won't go in just like that. So once again, let me pull that out, and let's try this again, and I'll go really slowly, and I got it. And then it slides all the way in. So now the next thing we're going to do is have to put on the charging handle. So we have this little lever once again. I can simply push down on that, take my charging handle, and put it into the bolt and the carrier. It should lock in, and there we go. And we are good. So now we have the gas tube, bolt, and bolt carrier on. So now let's do the hand guards. I have found that it is easier to put on the upper first. We'll slide that in, lock it into the back, and you'll know it's in when it goes flush with the receiver, like that. Now let's get our bipod and put this back on to the lower hand guard. Slide it on like such, and you know it's right if it folds into the handguard. So we'll close it up that way. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start back here, and I'm going to slide it forward. So I'll push it forward just a little bit, and it should go up. And then when I push forward, you'll notice it will line up with the hole in the receiver. And now the handguard is on. So now let's take our lower receiver, let's put these pins back through it. And they can be a little bit tricky, a little bit tough. And open those up. Then like an AR-15, we'll put the upper on the lower and simply lock in those pins. I'll do the back first. Then I gotta make sure this handguard is all lined up, and when it is, the other pin can go through. Then of course we can function check the firearm, insert the magazine, and make sure everything works. And it looks like we are good. So that is how you field strip for cleaning and maintenance and reassemble a Sig SG 550 rifle. It's a little bit complex, and especially with the gas tube can be a little bit difficult to line everything up, but I think once you get used to it, it's not that bad. So I hope this video helps somebody in the future. And as always, thanks for watching.